Nothing is fair. Adult life is not fair. Workplace is not fair. People are sneaky, people maneuver. So if you're sitting there that, for me, I am the one to get this, you don't get it. Yeah? People play you, and whenever you complain or what, people will come up with reasons why they gave it to the other person, not you. They will bypass you on a promotion, not because you don't deserve it. But other people negotiate. So you see, when you look at the most brilliant people at university, they're not the ones in charge of things. They're not the ones in promotion. The people we thought were very weak in school. Now these are people who have always known how to negotiate, how to navigate, how to do this to get what me I get easily.
Someone who might not be so aggressive like you, how does this person learn the skills of negotiation and fighting for space?
Okay, there are things that can be learned. Even me, there are things I've had to learn. Now, one of the things I've learned about fighting and also being in activism, like I'm the last immediate past chair of Uganda Media Women's Association. I'm also very active in civil society. One thing I learned is knowing the legal provisions. It depends on what you're fighting for. So sometimes we just make noise around for a promotion, for a salary increment. On what basis? People beat us because they are aware about the law. It is very easy for women to join the job market, but they are the first to quit. In journalism, you can see when you come to a mass comm class, most of the students we teach are female. Why are they not in the newsroom? Because those realities of sexual exploitation manifest there. Sometimes in that environment of school, you're cushioned a bit. Maybe some people face it, some people don't. But the reality starts then when you start working. And who wants to sleep with you? Who is saying they're the ones behind your promotion?
Internship.
Yes, I started experiencing it then. So it was so easy for me to start working compared to my male colleagues, because men had nothing to offer apart from their skill. And most people in charge were men. They just want to sleep with you. You want a promotion, you sleep. And me, I was like, I'll never sleep for a job. So then you realize, so you leave that job, go to another one. Within a short time, again, you find there is that. Some people are very obvious, others are subtle. Yes. So yes.
The worst thing in our society today is someone who thinks that honest and hard work will never pay off. Today I'm with someone who is very exemplary and can tell you that exactly honest and hard work pays off. And that is Dr. Patricia Kevin Litho. Why is Kevin silent?
Well, I don't know, but actually that's a name given to me by my mom. My mom is Kevin. Like the masculine type of spelling, K-E-V-I-N. Mine has an E at the end. You know, when you're growing up, when people give themselves certain names, Pato, what? So in that phase, I had an attraction to French. So I said, I want my name to sound Kevin. Because, you know, I went to a Catholic school. And Suwe, Kokonjero, Mount St. Mary, Stella Maris, and Suwe, Kokonjero.
Stella Maris.
And Suwe, in Mukono. They are there deep in the forest. And the nuns used to call me Kevin. I just couldn't deal with that. So I said, I must put an E accent with an hyphen. I just failed to find that hyphen in our keyboard. So I introduced the E at the end of my name. So that it is Kevin. Kevin, you can't say na. I was avoiding Kevin. It sounded so terrible to me.
So did you finally use the hyphen? Or you avoided it totally?
I eventually got rid of it because I failed to find on the keyboard how to use the hyphen. So when I officially registered for my PLE, I just put the E. Because also the teacher was like, but what is this thing on top of the E? You know, sometimes the Ugandan education, at least when I went to school, when the teacher didn't know something, then it didn't exist or it is wrong. But of course, as we get exposure, we've come across so many languages that have hyphens. And even these days, keyboards have those hyphens. A with a hyphen, you can find it. But at that time, yes, And you know, they argued about that, and I told them, no, I am named after my mom, and she's Kevin. But my moms didn't have the E, but you know, I had to sail through. So yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know, for some reason people either call me Patricia, and then I think from around this too, I got into this phase of Pan-Africanism. So I refused to be called by a Christian name. I didn't want to be called Patricia. Those who attempted to call me Kevin, I didn't respond. Like, I'd literally ignore you. Then when you say Litho, I would respond.
Okay.
So a lot of people I went to school with up to university called me Litho. When I hear someone say Litho, I know we go a long way. But you see, also as we grow old, we become more tolerant, we adjust. Then I started being more tolerant to Patricia. Yeah, but Kevin, I think there are 3-4 people in this world who call me Kevin. Yes, and I respond, it's my name, but that's why it's silent.
Okay.
And somehow, to avoid that Kevin nothing, because some people still insisted on calling me that, the older people, especially Catholic old people. So I started abbreviating it, Patricia K. Litho. So that the K remains there silent, and people always wonder, what is this? But it's my name. I'm Patricia Kevin Litho, named after my mom. My mom is Kevin.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, thank you very much. So
Long
I
story.
am with Dr. Patricia Kevin, or Dr. Patricia K. Litho. Before we go in further, could you just say hello to the viewers?
Hello viewers, how are you? I am happy to be here, but also flattered to have been chosen to speak to you. You know, sometimes you go about your life,
I know,
and you're not sure what the perspective is. Maybe quickly about myself, you know, I brand myself as an activist. Some people call it feminism, but you know, as an African woman, in feminism, I don't want to be called a feminist. I want to be called an activist. I stand for social justice, for fairness. But I also stand for things that a lot of feminists don't stand with, which are embedded in my culture. And also sometimes you think you're not very cultural, but we are products of our environment. I can't run away from my tribe, my culture, the homes I grew in, the schools I went to. And then with time you realize, oh, actually I don't mind this. So I always knew I wanted 2 children and no husband. And I remember one of my lecturers says, no, that's a very horrible way of thinking. It's not Christian.
Who was that
Christian?
lecturer?
Oh, she's called Barbara Musoke. She taught me journalism at UMI, Uganda Management Institute. We became friends along the way. She relocated to the US. She's one of those earlier journalists who had actually done journalism at school. You know, the older people, like when I joined, my first place of work was Radio Uganda, by the way. And a lot of the journalists had sort of, because you have a radio voice, as they used to tell us, or a broadcast voice. You can read your local language. So they looked for those skills. And then later on, the emphasis when they brought about the Jews and what, it was such a scandal, and people were furious when they required people to have a degree. Now, I'm one of those few people, maybe second, third cohort, that had left university with a degree to come into journalism. And there's always this conflict. But Barbara had, I think, been in the first or second cohort in Makerere of a mass communication student, and then I think she went to the American University, I think in Egypt or somewhere like that. I remember learned broadcasting. She's one of the pioneer broadcasters in Sanyu TV those days and things like that. Yes. So somehow we used to chat about activism things. And what we don't like about what men do to women, what we like, what we tolerate. And then I'm like, because I don't want to be subjugated to some of those things. Me, I want kids, but I don't want a husband. I'm very close to my dad. I think my dad is my best friend. Of course, we have fights and things like that, but it's a polygamous family. And I used to tell him, you're the best dad in the world. Even now we have those arguments, but you're the worst husband. Because I didn't like the polygamy bit of it because of course, a mother is a mother. The things she complains about, the things she's unhappy about, because of that polygamous arrangement. I know she's the first wife. So how she said, you know, she had a lovely relationship. What people used to admire her, he used to call her honey. Actually, It took me a long time to learn my mom's actual name. We all called her Honey because my dad always called her Honey. Very romantic. But along the way, Honey became Mommy. That's what my mom always says. And other women came in, other kids came in. But we all grew up together as kids, which was nice. So in my family, you won't even know who is the step sibling. I think most of us look more like my dad, so we look alike. Some of my siblings who look more like me are actually my step siblings. So that's how we grew up. We're actually over 22.
Oh,
yes.
Wow, that's great.
2 football teams and reserve.
Reserves,
yes,
including the coach.
Yes, the coach was very active. Yes, so that is why I didn't want a husband. I liked the idea of having children, but it also affected my attitude towards the number of children because there were so many in the house. You compete for resources. What? Of course, he was fairly okay. He could manage and afford and take us to good schools. But there's always competition for something when you're many. But it was also fun. You know, you become a choir, you sing, you dance, you do it together. But also the fights can be quite horrible. When there's a divide, whether the majority decide, oh, you're alone against 21 or things like that. Who's supporting mommy on this? Who's supporting dad on this? And because I'm very close to my father, even when he was in the wrong, people thought I supported him, but I actually don't. I'm a very objective person, but I also avoid embarrassing people older than me, something I learned somewhere along the way. So my father, because he's my very close friend, I speak to him. But in the public, I'll defend him with my life.
Okay.
Yes? But on the side, I'll tell him, Daddy, actually, you're wrong on this one. Mommy's right on this one.
Wow.
As a husband, you should. Yeah. We have those tough conversations, and sometimes, okay, I want to go to bed. I don't want to talk about it again. Or the next day, and then he has this thing of like, because for me, I speak my mind. If I decide I'm speaking about this, whether you're in authority, my boss, I will tell you. Yes, you're my boss, I'll do what you want, but I have reservations, and these are my reservations, and these are my reasons. So that's how I relate with my father. And my mom sometimes finds it hard to understand me. But I actually stand for women. My mom is, I think, 76. My dad made 80 last year in October, and we had this grand function for him of 80 years, and I was passionate about it. And you know, being from communication, people are thinking of all the different gifts to give him, but what do you give an old man who seems to have everything? He's had his house, he's had his cars, he still has that, he has 1 million children. I decided that let me use my talent to give back, say something to my dad. So I actually produced a book, Okelo at 80, and I interviewed my siblings, and each one shared the worst memories, the best memories, what they like about their dad and things like that. I also interviewed my mother. Of course, I didn't interview the other women for obvious reasons, but I know they are there. Yes.
You published the book?
No, I didn't publish it. It was my gift.
It was
so
your gift
I presented
it.
it. And you know, when I was hustling my siblings for photos, they wondered why. I wanted 3 kinds of photos. A photo when, any photo of yours that you like. A photo when you graduated. You see, those are the milestones that parents look out for. So I wanted when people were young, when they graduated, and when they got married. Now, in my family, I think all of us have graduated. So I was asking everyone, apart from, we have very young ones, by the way, who I think about 7. Okay, those ones haven't graduated. But, so I was looking for a photo of you, either professionally. So I would capture, you know, we have doctors, we have pilots. So, and one of the beautiful memories, my brother, who is a pilot, one day surprised my dad when he was driving a chartered plane, and literally put him in the plane. And my dad's dream, the way my brother became a pilot, my dad's dream had always been to be a pilot. He actually did a bit of aeronautic engineering, but that's another whole long story. I don't know if I should tell it. But eventually he changed. He's an engineer. He's a mechanical engineer.
Wow.
But I think it was, he said during that Amin regime, a young man who is confused. Today wants to be in the army. Tomorrow he wants to do this. And in that confusion of running here, coming there, there was a scholarship for 4 people. Now to further aeronautic engineering. It was in Chambogo in America. he missed his flight. And it hurt him, and those days that was it, no means of communication. They've communicated you,
sorry.
be here by this time and what. And you know, as we grew up, you know, my dad is an amazing storyteller. He tells a lot of stories, but you could see that hurt him. He said, I wish one of my kids could become a pilot. Now this brother of mine went and did civil engineering and finished. And then one of those days, my dad was still going on about this pilot dream of his, and while none of us has allowed to do this. And then my brother said, Daddy, are you really serious? You want one of your kids to be a pilot? Would you pay for me as a private student, even if I finish school, to be a pilot? Like, yes, right away. Where? So my brother said, oh, I know Soreti University is recruiting. Gave him money to the bus, brought the tuition. The rest is history. Is a pilot now. So my brother took my dad on a flight and put him on the cockpit and guided him. So those are one of the photos I exhibited. So I show my brother the pilot, him and his father. So that's the fourth photo I showed. So everyone, a physical photo where with your father, something you'd like. So now he has that one with his son in the cockpit. I have one with him. I think one time, I don't know, we're talking about what. I have a sister who is, I think she's one of the few, I think there are 3 pediatric surgeons in Uganda, and she's one of them. So I show her in her doctor's robe, and her with her father. We have caterers, we have this, but I show different people with their dad. Then also those who have kids. Not all of us have kids. Also my dad with his grandchildren. Yeah, so that was the storyline. But us saying something about him, what we like about him, our worst memory about him, my best, and as usual, me, I say best dad, worst husband, but best friend as well.
But best friend, okay. Yes. So thank you very much. Before you continue, my name is Daniel Mugoya. I didn't tell my name at the beginning, but I am glad that I'm one of the people having that great opportunities to interview you, being someone who practiced media for over 20 years. Yes. Secondly, someone who has worked hard, like what I started with in my preamble. You are someone who is an example of hard work. Thank you. I really want you to inspire those young generation through your story.
You said Daniel Mugoya?
Daniel Mugoya.
Wow.
Yeah.
My sons are Basoga, so I recognize the name Mugoya. My eldest son, he's 16. He's Daniel Mudola. They are from that Mudola family. His dad, his grandfather was Professor Dan Mudola, so he's named after his granddad. My husband he passed on, was Dennis Mugua Mudola. Oh. So of course when you say Daniel Mugoya, I was like, my husband, Musada. And then the younger one is Zach Mugari. So I'm home.
And I think I am more than home than you, because being Daniel Mugoya, our great grandparents shifted from the Winyole side, and had to reside in Tororo.
Oh, in Tiene. Yeah, there you go. So you don't even ask me where I'm from and what language I speak. Yes, I'm Jap. My parents are Japadola. My dad is from Kisoko. My mom is from Nagongere, a place called Kiye.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
But my dad, okay, now sort of to go back to what you wanted to speak about hard work. My dad was a prisons officer. He retired at the rank of assistant commissioner, which can be like a colonel in the army. But he's professionally a mechanical engineer, and because of that, eventually I think that at the time he retired, he became director of transport, in charge of the garage, in charge of transport, fuel, fleet management, and things like that. And actually, I recall one of the benefits when I just started driving. I used to go to him, Daddy, you're in charge of all this fuel for prisons in Uganda. You need to give me some fuel. And he would laugh and said, no, you work. You had a salary. You can buy your own fuel. But my dad, because of that military training, he sort of ran his home in that sort of way. And my mom was the balancing. My mom is very amiable, very kind. Everyone is his friend. All people who meet my mother, my friends, are my mom's personal friends. They will leave me here, Patricia, and go all the way to Iganga. My parents moved to Iganga and go to see my mother. While my dad is reserved, but again is very articulate and what. It depends on how you relate with him. It takes long to warm up, very cautious, but yes, he talks. So many people can think he's a very quiet guy, but my mom is very bubbly, very welcoming, that kind of person. So because my dad was in service, I've literally, for my primary school, I almost went to 10 different schools because he was always, before he finally settled at headquarters, he was always being transferred. I was born in Masaka, Chitovu Hospital. But while we were still there, my dad, I think, was transferred to Kitalia. And of course, we also had to move and change schools. Then we came to Kampala, where we studied a bit. There are some schools in Luzira Barracks. There's Makshon Bay Primary School and Nursery. But while we were there, when my dad now, because he went to maximum prison as deputy OC. Then when he came to headquarters in town, he moved us to Chambogo Primary School. While we were still there, he was transferred to Karamoja. Now that time Karamoja was so deadly. So they first left us in Tororo. We studied a bit in Tororo. Then he came for us.
That is Kaikisoko.
No. Tororo town, real Tororo town. We have a home in, they call it Tikaf. Of course, now he sold most of those places. They are factories. That corner going
TC.
to Busia. Yes.
TC.
Around there. That junction of Tororo,
I think
Busia,
UCI,
Malaba.
around UCI.
Yes, actually. Our home is at UCI. So I also went to UCI primary school, I think for like 2 years. And then my dad came for us and we went now to Kotido, real Kotido. So in Kotido, we first went to Kotido Mix. But sometimes some of our classmates were these big boys, maybe 18-year-olds. That was in my P3. And when it's time for raiding, you know,
that was before the family turned polygamous.
No, it was already polygamous by then. I think the polygamy started with me because my older brother, I'm the second child in the family. In rank, but you find that we are 3 people of the same age, just months apart. So my eldest brother is Patrick, and then there is me, but I call myself a triplet because of the way we were brought up. So I have a brother who is 1 month younger than me. Then I have a sister who is 1 month older than me. Yes, so long story, but yes.
It's hard to believe, but
my name Litho means pain. Since you know
Litho.
Litho. You know now the right pronunciation, of course, because people can't say that. Just say Litho.
I'll try to teach
Litho. It is Litho. That name is from my mother. She said she had the worst pregnancy, and those are the results. My other 2 siblings, I think that's when the man learned to go hunting and things like that. But prior to that, it all seemed good. And I'm very close to my dad. And my mom always says that your relationship with your dad is a guilt trip because he treated me so badly when I was expecting you. So when you are born to make up, those are some of the things my mom throws around. But I'm very, very, very close to my dad. Even 2 years ago, my dad got a stroke, and I lived with him during. But he's come around. He's come around. He still has a limp, and he came and lived with me. I said, I'm only comfortable in Patricia's home, so the others would come. Yes, we are very, very close. There's even a room, we said Daddy's room in my house. So during that time, that's I think when the polygamy started. And so after that, almost every other sibling of mine that my mom has another sibling that's almost the same age, either a year older or a year younger than them along the way. So that's I think how it started. So but for us, we don't go into those details.
Of course.
And,
of course.
The African family, and of course, as I got into feminism, sometimes I would challenge him. My daddy, really, why? Then he would give excuses. I come from a very small family. Strangely enough, my parents both come from very small families. My mom, there were only 4 siblings. She's the only surviving one. There were 3 girls and 1 boy. My dad, there were also 4 siblings. Both of them had my dad had a stepmother, but who never had a child. My mother had a stepmother who had a child born in another marriage, and then she married my granddad, but they never had a child. But they have a lot of cousins and things like that. So they came from very small families. Yeah, so my parents come from very small families, which is strange for that generation. So my dad, like Luo men have those excuses. That is a Luo man, he must expand his culture. His family is so thin. And then there were 3 boys and 3 girls. And his 2 brothers, the oldest, I think is like a 3rd born. The oldest passed on, and also the last born was a boy, also passed on. So like he remained the only boy. So he kept saying it's his responsibility to expand his
family and
his culture, because his family is very small. So that's why he's having kids, because he can't put all that burden on my mom, which I found a lousy excuse. But anyway, there you go. But saying that, so from Kotido, they decided to take us, the girls, to a boarding school. So they took me to Abim. There's a missionary school called Morolem. So from there, my dad was transferred back to Kampala. From Kampala back to Jinja. I went to Spire Road Primary School. And then after all that moving, my mom decided, no, it's now time to go to a boarding school. You guys, and I don't know, she used to say I'm naughty, especially the girls. So me, I was the first to be taken to a boarding school. And that boarding school, Stella Marie in Sube, you know, there was a lot of digging, a lot of what, which seemed like a problem at that time. But it gave me certain life skills. But also my dad, like up to now, it is like a disease, one of which should be a strength, but it's also a weakness for others. My promptness. For me, timekeeping is a problem, and when you can't keep time, I am irritated. My dad would literally start his car in the morning, and he will drive off and you'll chase the car. You want fees, and you can't wake up, find your way to Kampala from Luzira. Like there were all these jokes how we used to tease each other, who chased the car, who ran into the car in a night dress, because you have to catch him. You have to wake up at 5, and when you would be on leave, we would all go to Tororo, and you wake up at 5 and you have to dig. And to teach that discipline, my dad will say, to earn an exercise book is a row of maize weeded. Now, I don't know how meters those were, but it was far. All I know, it was very, very, very far. So you want an exercise book, 48 pages, it's all up to you. So every row finished, that is one. So he would literally give you, he used to have reams of paper, which was strange at that time. So every row is a ream of paper. When you fold it, those are how many pages? 4 pages. Then he gives you a ruler and pencil to make the lines. He would rarely buy us books. When he's on leave, he doesn't buy books. Only when he's back from leave, as in Kampala. So we had to work. If you want a pencil, 1 row. 1 pen, 1 row. A rubber, half a row. But for the books, 1 row. So man, you had to dig. And then at 10, you take a break. My mom and maybe my older siblings, some girls who are living with us, then they would bring the breakfast, you dig and continue. So if you can only dig 3, you get 3 sheets of paper and fold. If you can negotiate with the siblings, so people learned how to trade. That okay, me I'm fast at digging. And man, he would come and check and kick around to see if you covered the grass and things like that.
Which year was
so we
that,
learned.
if you remember?
Oh my God. I'm not very good with figures, but I am making 50 on the 9th of June. So I don't know how many years that go back to, in the 80s.
In the 80s.
The 82s, the 80 years. I was born in 75. So you see, some years back, and when we got older, he had stopped doing those things. But as younger children, he instilled. And actually my siblings, let's say after the first 5 people, those are very lazy people, even in the family. They can't do anything. But as the older ones, actually we call ourselves the big 4, then there are those middle ones. The first 4 older people, I think we are all very hardworking. We can do anything. I can dig, I can mop, I can change a cable. We even learned how to change those days of stealing electricity, how to remove the meter and the chip and put the fuse. We had to learn all that. Like we are all women and men in terms of, you know how culturally there are jobs assigned to women and men. No, in my family, most especially as the older ones, you all cooked, you all washed, you all did what? My dad did that, and because my dad could cook, you know, my dad was in Europe a bit. So when he came, like, on weekends, the girls find what to do. Boys in the kitchen. Yes. This weekend, boys are
He
working.
was in Europe before joining prison.
During prison.
During prison.
Well, because it's more about me, I'm not really talking about him, but I'm going to find a copy of that book and give it to you. It is still work in progress, but at that time, because I had to deliver it, but his biography is there. So during one of those prisons things, you know, like the way the army guys go to Sandhurst and things like that, also prison officers, cadets, because if you had a diploma graduate, you went for cadet. So eventually went for cadet as a prisons officer. So he came out as an officer already. So then they went to, now I've forgotten the name, but we'll check somewhere in Birmingham. They went for a 9 months training. Yes, so he went to the UK. And then I think that also, even if he has some attributes that as activists critique, he also surprisingly is a blend of a very forward-looking person. He sees no problem with a man cooking, but any woman in the kitchen. So you see, there was always that conflict in the family. This typically male in the military, but he has no problem washing clothes, washing kids to bathe, cooking. And all my brothers know how to cook because they were brought up like that, because my dad is a cook. And now my mom used to call me the man. I was always with the boys. I was a tomboy for a long time. So when the cooking happened, I'm the only girl who joined the boys, because when the girls were cooking, I was never there. I was never hanging out with the girls. So I think also some of the attributes I pick, because I was always associated with the males in the family. I did more what the boys. I played football. Even at school, I played hockey, football. Things considered very rough and belonged to men. I did them. And it is weird, you know, food.
Is it something they call being aggressive? What?
Yes, people think I'm aggressive, but I think I'm naturally like that. But I'll tell you, one of the funniest things with food and things like that, one of the reasons I did what boys did, because in my culture, cutting chicken, cow, goat are male's things. But what my brothers would do, because my mom used to rear a lot of chicken, we had goats, cows, you know, and in prison there are all these provisions. As an officer, you get some of these supplies for free and what. So the boys, when they would cut chicken, because we were many, so they would slaughter a lot of chicken. All those nice inside things, the liver, the gizzard, they would now go and fry it. But only the people who participated in the chicken cutting and taking off the feathers and cutting before the women cook were boys. So they named it a workman's commission. So really I would feel bad. They know that's a delicacy. So I said, I am going to learn how to slaughter a chicken.
Who brings that name?
The boys, I don't know. They called it a workman's commission.
Was it after meeting or someone came up with it? I
don't know how it came, but it came from the boys. When us the girls would complain that you people we also want some liver, said no, this is workman's commission. The men did the slaughtering. I'm not. This is our reward. For people you're going to cook, you can taste a whole thigh, but for us this is the workman's commission. I said I must have some of the workman's commission. I know they would make it so nice. The aroma, it hurt. So I said I am going to learn how to cut a chicken. So one day I insisted, they showed me, hold it like this and slit the throat. When it came to the goat, now that one after the goat I didn't proceed because it was quite scary. You know how the goat opens its eyes and not, but I'm like, I have to eat part of the liver of this goat. You show me. So whenever there was cutting chicken, I was one of those who cut. So I would be part of the workman's commission. Then somehow, I don't know why I was attracted to food, but I was always with my brothers. So I was always playing with the boys in the neighborhood and my brothers football. And actually even at school I always played the full back, you know, guarding the goal, not a goalkeeper but the full back.
The number 5.
I don't even know what it's called.
It's number 5,
but then I don't know why they called it full back. The defender. Yes, I was always a defender. So by that I'm a very good football player.
That's very good.
Yes.
Why is Uganda not taking chances with?
No, but you see, the rugby club in Uganda, when I was at university, the rugby team was called Impis. we started, we were 3 girls, we started the Sweet Impies, the girls, which later, now some of those, of course, when we just graduated, after every Monday, there was a guy called Bill. The gentleman would train us, the rugby player, and he mixed all the ladies and men, and would train and would play the curtain raiser games as the ladies. But now other girls started getting attracted, and then I went to the UK for my masters. By the time I was back, there was a national female rugby team, but the lady who was in charge was one of the people we started with. But you see now, of course, when I came back, it's like I'd lost touch with the group. I tried to go back. I'd been out, then I moved on with other things, yes. But I was very sporty like that, and because it's a very rough game, but somehow me, I am an adrenaline junkie. I climb trees, I climb hills, I go for zip lining. That is me. That makes me happy. And I came up with a term called invisible satisfaction, invisible food, soul food. I remember when we used to argue, when we started working, a lot of my female friends went for makeup, new shoes, new dresses. Me, I went for adventure. I went to dance. I went for zip lining. I went to climb, I don't know which mountain. For me, those are the things that make me happy. So I would tell, so they would critique, like, now you're saying that makes you happy. You should buy a new shoe. You should buy what? But for me, at that time, of course, I think...
Don't you think you are just trying to enjoy your hobbies? Just like what you...
Yes, I was enjoying my hobbies, but society...
Was it the right thing to do at that time?
Yes, it was. It was.
Okay,
I mean, that is what I wanted.
Did you know it was the right thing to do by then?
Yes, I think for me, I became aware of my rights at a very young age. Yeah? So I was considered aggressive because I was like, you want me to do that because I'm a girl, but me, I want to do the other one. The other one is what I enjoy. So I always insisted on doing what I want. Yeah? I would even protest. I said, okay, I'll do that, but I am going to go and do the other one. And most of the things I was attracted to, the things I enjoyed the best, seemed to be things that were associated with men. But you know, those
pull the lapel down, pull the microphone down, okay?
Yes. To me, those are things anyone should do. And as I got into feminism, activism, those were the arguments. That you see, there are 3 types of roles. The reproductive role that men and women must play. One fertilizes the egg, the other carries the baby and gives the birth and breastfeeds. Beyond that, anyone should be able to do. A man should be able to change the baby's nappies, which I saw my father doing, and yet my father is very patriarchal in many ways. But that attribute that a lot of men associate with being feminine on what he did, and he still remained a man's man, you know. There's nothing feminine about my father. But so even that showed me, but you see, my father cooks. No one has died, as they would say culturally. I climb trees and the tree has not dried the way people want to say. My mother said, come down, come down. And so it reached a point when my mom saw I'm very forthcoming, so she found another way to negotiate with me. So you see, anything you do that is considered wrong for you to do as a girl, they blame me. They say I'm a bad mother. So sometimes it was an emotional blackmail that I did what girls should do so that my mother is not considered a bad mother.
You became the mirror.
Yeah, so because it was like a good daughter is a reflection of how good the mother is. But a prosperous woman is a reflection of the father. So anything bad, your mother's fault. Anything good, your father is amazing. So I think there are some of those skills, like skills that were indoctrinated in us as kids. Because my father was in the military, he's insane about certain things, timekeeping, working hard, he wouldn't tolerate, and is one of those where you see a lot of parents claim they used to be number 1 and 2 and very brilliant at school. My dad, his reports speak for himself, very intelligent man and brilliant, literally even lock you in a room. I remember myself, I think I was very non-conformist growing up. So sometimes she literally locked me in a room so that I can't revise. But again, I think I was generally a bright person. I'm one of those, like on campus, knowing I like to go dancing and things like that. And in my years, 95, 98, we literally danced every day. I think there was only Sunday when there was no club. And I went out every day to dance. But I knew my weakness, that if I go to bed, I will not wake up. So what I would do, I would dance up to 5, leave the club and enter the lecture room. Do all my lectures for the day. I was in Mary Stewart and go and sleep. Then when I wake up in the evening, I start preparing for another night out.
Did you have a group you used to move out with?
Yes, of course. You have colleagues that you're doing this with. Also, my big brother at that time was in Lumumba, strangely enough. So also, I think he quickly oriented me to certain things about campus life. So sometimes I went with him and his friends, sometimes I went with my friends. But the strange thing is that for me, I hardly revised. I have a gift of retention. Sometimes even 2-3 years later, something can come up and I can remind you that
this happened.
That Daniel, on this day we sat on my veranda, you had blue socks, you had I don't know. Sometimes I don't even realize that I retain that information. But sometimes when something happens or you're denying something, some of my brain just switches to that time, that moment. There's a photographic memory where I can describe for you
the impression
of that day, how you sat, how I sat, how I dressed, how you dressed, how I don't know, even someone interrupted us, who else was there. I have that ability.
It's a natural gift.
Yes. And I didn't even, actually someone pointed it out to me. When we were doing my PhD, I had a friend from Tanzania.
That's why in London.
Yes, in the UK. He's half Arab, half Tanzania. And he used to call me his sister. His dad is a black guy and his mom is an Arab. And so he's one of those people we call machoted or something like that. But somehow we grew very close. But he was also a PhD student. And somehow scientists, pure scientists, have a problem with writing. So as usual, most of my friends are male. So all these boys who are IT or scientists would come to me to help them write. And because I've always been drawn to computer technology somehow, I picked a lot of interest in ICT. And even my PhD, I ended up looking at ICT and women's economic empowerment. So sometimes they told me things in programming and things like that. And when I would be helping them to write, PhD philosophy, it's all about writing and explaining things. And sometimes I would tell them things and they would, wait a minute, how did you know that? How did you remember that? But I read your work to be able to help you to write. Or we had this discussion and you explained this to me. And so that's the first person who pointed out to me that, but Patricia, do you know you have a photographic memory? And I asked, what is that? I didn't even know what that was. And they explained, people have the ability to memorize things as easy. It's almost like they took a photo of a moment. Yeah, so it's the first person who told me I had a photographic memory. But sometimes I remember things that happened to me when I was in nursery. For instance, I remember at that Maction Bay nursery school, one day bees attacked the nursery. And everyone ran and I just stood crying and a lot of bees beat me and I just cried. I just stood there and cried. But I remember that day so well. And I remember, so I went home and after like a week of recovering from the bites, I came back to school and I was gifted with honey from those bees that beat me because they were there. But I remember that day so well. Like I see it. So anyway, I have that sort of ability. So I feel that I didn't struggle much at school. I just pay attention and take down notes, and that is it. And I'll come and do my exam and I pass. Which became a problem when I did my PhD, because I'm not used to reading. And actually, of course, as I became a lecturer, I also sensed that in my students. And because I taught undergraduate and postgraduate students, I noticed that students who are very bright at undergraduate struggle as postgraduate students because they don't know how to read. Because I had gone through, it was retrospective, I could see myself. And initially when I first submitted my PhD proposal, it was rejected. And I had never been in a situation where I'm rejected as an underperforming student. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I sulked. Yes, I went sulking. I refused to write. I refused to do anything for like almost 4 months. I just get up in the morning, walk in the London streets, window shop. What, I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed. Me, Patricia Litho. How can I fail? I had never failed academically. So it was a shock to my system. I didn't know how to deal with it. But somehow along the way I talked to some people, and then I came across a lady who was teaching at the university who was Ugandan. She's called Miriam Mukasa. And then we're chatting about this challenge and what, and I was telling her, like, really, how can they fail me? Me, I believe I'm a very bright person. You see, I'm very self-aware at the same time, and sometimes people take it as arrogance. I know what I'm good at, and I'll tell you in your face that no, me, I am this. So I am very self-aware. I know my strengths, but I'm also very aware about my weaknesses, and which sometimes helps me deal with them. How to address this? Like, I know I'm very short-tempered, and I lose it.
Can they be called the characters of self-esteem? Like
my weaknesses
or
my strengths? No, I think I have a very strong self-esteem. I'm not easily intimidated, and I don't know, I'm just like that. Yes, I am born like that. Like, I'm a very confident person. But I also have weaknesses, and I'm aware about them.
But if you look back in your family, do you think there's anywhere you derive this from, or it's just...
I think I grew up in a very competitive environment. So I had to fight. And you see, second borns, I'm told naturally, second borns, we fight for our space. Being a second born, like there's my big brother was the first child, and I was born 2 years later. He had a lot of attention. It was all about him and things like that. He's entitled. I want this, he gets. By the time I was born, there was competition. Yes. So I have to fight for this. I also want that. Why are you only giving that to that? So I think from a very young age, because I was fighting for my space, fighting for the benefits that the first child had. Like, from a very young age, I was fighting for my space, fighting for rights, fighting for things that I think I should have access to. And because even the firstborn was a boy, culturally, the Japadola, the Luos, there are some benefits that automatically go to males that women are denied.
Exactly.
So from a very young age, I was fighting for those benefits. I'm like, excuse me, I'm also a child here. No, but you're not a girl. But I'm like, and what is wrong? What is wrong with being a girl? Why can't I have that? You know? And so I grew up where they say I'm like a boy, I'm aggressive, those things about women should look down what I don't do, those kind of things. I don't know how to kwemola. You know, it is not in my DNA. Things that, you know how they say, you know, if you want to get money off your husband or boyfriend, you do this. I'm one of those who will tell you point blank, I need money for this. Hey, you either give it to me or not. I don't know how to use those feminine attributes for my benefit, but I know how to work for everything. So for me, I know that to get something, you have to work for it. But also, I came across a certain Nigerian lady at some time. I remember I was whining about something at one of my jobs, you know, and she told me, and she was representing the funder. But we sort of hit it off. That was, I was working at National Council of Science and Technology, my first corporate communication job. And then maybe shortly I'll explain to you how I moved away from mainstream journalism to now corporate communication. And this lady, so because my master's, I had done what we call business communication, which has communication marketing, and at that time this whole thing of IT in communication was coming up, of internet, of advertising. That is what I did. Actually, that's what attracted me to that course. So I went, that's the first time I went to the UK for my master's. And then when I came back, because I had that IT background, there was a project, an ICT project, to set up telecenters, I think in Buwama, Nabweru, those first, what later people picked up as web cafes. So we did it as a service, as an civil society work. But this was implemented by the National Council for Science and Technology. So eventually they put me in charge of that project because of my ICT background. But this particular time there was a sponsorship for a conference in South Africa, and it was at the name has disappeared, that popular place in South Africa. Well, if I remember, I'll come back, but there's that famous hotel, Sun City. And I'd always wanted to go to Sun City because of what they say about it, and Michael Jackson had been there, you know, those people you admire and what. I also want to do that. But now when it came to select people going, I felt that being the project coordinator, naturally, I should have been the one going for that conference. And then my boss chose some other officers who are not even on the project because they were senior to me. I don't know what, some funny excuses and himself, and they left me out. But even the funding was coming from the project, and that hurt me so much. So during one of that moment, because this was 3 months before when they were choosing the people going, the donor came and they were doing an assessment of the project, and she asked me, so definitely, Patricia, we are going to see you at Sunset. I'm like, unfortunately not. Like, how come you're the project coordinator? I said, well, I was not chosen because of this and this, apparently what? So she asked me, do you want to go? Then she's like, yes. Then she told me, stop whining, do something about it. Something again I learned along the way. You know, I was very aggressive, but sometimes when I reached a point where I felt I couldn't get it, like I sort of know my battles. Like this one, I won't win, I retreat and I sulk and then I move on. So it was one of those where I tried to fight and I couldn't win. And so I was busy sulking. So this lady phoned me. And for me, most of my learning points are in those weak moments where I have failed at something and maybe someone gives me a word of wisdom and it sort of registers. And you know, you sort of follow it and see it works. So she told me, Ford Foundation is the one funding this conference. And this is funded by Ford Foundation, by Canadians. What you do is you write. By that time, I just won my scholarship for a PhD, and it was a Ford Foundation scholarship. So say, write on the fact that you're a Ford Foundation fellow. So they called us fellows before we actually started using the funding. And because it's a very competitive process, Ford Foundation knows that whoever wins that scholarship, I think we're only 9 in Uganda who won it. It was a very competitive process in East Africa. I'm told we're over 91 applicants in East Africa, and we went to Arusha for an interview, and I came out among the 9 Ugandans to have won the scholarships, and only the 2 PhDs who are going. So she told me that's a very rigorous process, meaning you're good. You're good at what you do, you're brilliant. And it was rigorous. You do an oral interview, then they shortlisted us. We did another oral interview, did a written interview before you get that scholarship. And I won the scholarship. So she told me, write a proposal to say as a Ford Foundation scholar, and you're planning to do ICTs, and you're coordinating this project, you're coordinating 10 different companies in Uganda, you're the project coordinator seated at the headquarters. So she told me what to write, and she told me, I am going back to Nairobi tomorrow. So the coordination office was in Nairobi. I'm going back to Nairobi tomorrow. This was at 4 p.m. when we had this conversation. My flight is at 8 in the morning. I need to get that proposal by 5 in the morning before I'm sleeping at what? Sheraton Hotel. I sat up in the night. So I know how to push myself, but also I'm lucky that I'm a nocturnal. I sleep very little. I'm very active in the night. So most of my writings, I do them in the night because I want that quiet. Somehow, even if I like the active, busy, loud life, but my most productive moments is when there's absolute quiet. So I also like to go to the office very early. Apart from now, when I got kids and I have to drop them at school, naturally for me, by 6 I'm on my desk. And that is my most productive moment, when people are not yet at office. So by the time people start knocking my door at 9, 10, I have outputs. And my system, I learned my system that by midday, I'm not productive. I will automatically know that it's midday because of the way I feel. I can no longer produce. I feel tired. I feel restless. And when I look, it's midday. I always get hungry at 3. I will know it is 3 when I feel hungry. And I'll tell someone, it must be about 3. Like, how do you know I am hungry? Somehow I have learned my body. Then I'm most productive between midnight and 5 a.m. And I'll get out of my bed. Most times I'm not even asleep. And I will sit and I will type and produce. And people are like, when do you do these things? But they're not willing to put in that time.
And it's a routine.
I am like that. I party hard, I work hard, I love to party. I know a lot of people who achieve what I've achieved are not social people. Some people think I'm tough, but I'm also very social people. I like to have fun, I like to have my drink, I like to dance. I really love to dance. So I'm someone who parties. So I'll go to club and come back and sit and take out my laptop and type away. Part of my job is to write speeches for the ministers, sometimes the president, the prime minister. I'll sit in the night and write the speech, and it's perfect. So it is also a gift. I am like that. There are things I can't explain, but also there are things I worked on. So what I learned from that lady, so after I did this, I took her to the proposal. She was like, oh, impressive. You're actually here with a proposal. Those days, there was no those on-the-go work. So I had to come to the office, print and run to her office and give it to her hotel room and give it to her. And she left. And 4 days later, she called and said, I have submitted this to Ford Foundation. You're going to be considered. But Ford Foundation said, just funding you alone, one person, one ticket is too small. It's money they don't disperse. Can you include 14 other people so that it's a big funding, justify like this, correct like this? And all those people benefited from my sweat. But what does it mean? We met in South Africa with my boss, and I was VIP. Because from this that I'd done, there's a package they got for me. I was in South City in a VIP room. I had a business seat on my ticket. Yet if the office had funded me, I was going to be in business class. I was an ordinary officer. So this is what she told me. So when we met in South Africa, she told me, Patricia, you're finally here. I want you to learn this about in life. It's not about what you deserve, it's what you negotiate. And I've carried that with me in my life. So this was around 2002.
So that's what
when she told me that. Yes, but already I'm a fighter.
But in what spirit was she speaking to you?
Because I had whined about me being the rightful person to have come for this conference because I'm the project coordinator, but now my boss played me. So she taught me that in life, nothing is fair. Adult life is not fair. Workplace is not fair. People are sneaky, people maneuver. So if you're sitting there that, for me, I am the one to get this, you don't get it. People play you, and whenever you complain or what, people will come up with reasons why they gave it to the other person, not you. They will bypass you on a promotion, not because you don't deserve it. But other people negotiate. So you see, when you look at the most brilliant people at university, they're not the ones in charge of things. They're not the ones in promotion. The people we thought were very weak in school. Now these are people who have always known how to negotiate, how to navigate, how to do this to get what me I get so easily.
Someone who might not be so aggressive like you, how does this person learn the skills of negotiation and fighting for space?
Okay, there are things that can be learned. Even me, there are things I've had to learn. Now, one of the things I've learned about fighting and also being in activism, like I'm the last immediate past chair of Uganda Media Women's Association. I'm also very active in civil society. One thing I learned is knowing the legal provisions. It depends on what you're fighting for. So sometimes we just make noise around for a promotion, for a salary increment. On what basis? People beat us because they are aware about the law and how to go about what. Where do I go to get this? Where do I go to get this? Where can I find this? So I learned to read legal things. Actually, at one point I even signed up for a law degree, and then I asked, but do I really need it? Because I felt I had to empower myself. You know, I learned that you must have some skills, some what do I call it?
I can understand
that winning card, your little secret, your winning secret that you don't share with anyone. And also, Patricia, how do you do this? But I learned that you must know. So a lot of us, especially women, unfortunately, when we get a job, I think we just want to have a job. Because again, society has taught us that most women don't have to work. There will be this man who comes for you and takes care of your needs and what. So sometimes we just want to do something else. We just want to work. I just want some money. Because my husband maybe is a selfish guy, he'll only cater for basic needs. But women, we have a lot of wants. I want a new dress with the matching shoe, with the matching handbag, with the matching hairband. And of course, if resources are few, a man will tell you, who is actually incurring most of the financial burden, will tell you that, look here, we don't have enough money, it's school fees time. For me, there is a wedding, and women, we can be unreasonable. For me, there is a wedding. And I am not going to wear that dress I wore the other day because people are going to make fun of me. Those are things that matter to women, by the way, a lot. So of course, being a woman, I have some of those attributes. But I also know that if the man can't give it to me, I should be able to give it to myself. Yeah. How do I give it to myself? I need the money. How do I get this money? Work hard. Work hard. How do I work hard? Is there a training opportunity? Is there a consultancy opportunity? Do I have to sit up in the night? Oh, most women love their beauty sleep. They want to do, you know, we like the soft life. But I've known that to enjoy the other thing, I need to work hard and get money. So I know how to work hard. I know how to beat deadlines. But also the beauty about journalism that it teaches you how to beat deadlines. And those days, you don't have your byline in, you don't get paid. So I learned how to beat deadlines. So somehow a bit of my character, a bit of how I was brought up, but a bit of wanting the best. It reached a point, for instance, I want a car. Me, I want 4-wheel drive cars. I am not going to drive those little cars. I always wanted a big car. Yes. So I knew I had to work hard. I need so much to buy a car because the people buying me, because my first car was bought by my father, thanks to him. It was a little Corona. But me, I wanted a 4-wheel drive. So I said I should work hard for a 4-wheel drive. So eventually, I was able to buy myself. I think my first 4-wheel was a Prado. Then I bought a Range Rover. Then now I drive a Ford. So but for me, and people say, a motor can sajja.
Didn't you have anywhere in your mind that you needed to start small?
I know I have to start small. I didn't minimize any job, but I know how to work for the bigger goal. I don't know. And so like I want this. I've given myself 2 years. Like one day I just woke up and said, I want my own home. I'm tired of renting. But when I want a home, I don't want those little places where I reverse out of my own gate. I should be able, I don't know, somehow, like by then my husband was still alive and we're talking about getting a home. And I told him, you see, there were a lot of those 25 by 25. I'm like, no, we have to buy enough land. And for me, because I've had that multicultural background, like I told you, my initial life, I went to 10 different schools, 10 different parts of the country.
The exposure.
I can live anywhere. I can associate with any tribe, any what. So I'd always told my husband that, you see, I have seen white people. They come to Uganda and you find someone in the middle of Mabira with a very nice house with all the amenities. And yet in Uganda, like most African places, village, grass-thatched house. Town, a permanent house. I'm like, no, why can't we put up a nice house in the village? Why can't I have a bathtub in my village home? So that when I go home, I'm comfortable. I have all those things I like. And so for me, that's how I look at life. So I have a village home. It is much smaller, but it has a replica of most of what I have here. Yes? Why should I use a basin when I go to my up-country home? Why can't I have a shower or a bath? So I made sure I do that.
So you put that house in your side of the father, or where you got married to?
Well, it's in Busoga, but it's my dad who gave me the land. I actually built this house after my husband died, but also where my husband is from, there was a place, but you know, there are those challenges when people die and you move on. But in Jap, when a woman loses a husband, there are 2 ways you can go about it. You either come back home, which culture I didn't know until I lost my husband. So my dad says, I asked the Japadola, I literally said, catch war nyarinoto. Idok page. You come back home, but you decide whether you want to remarry and move on, or you want to come back home and stay home. So if you opt to stay home, your parents have a responsibility of giving you where to stay. So my dad asked me that question. Do you plan to remarry or you back home? I'm like, I am never going to get married again, number one. That doesn't mean I won't have relationships, but I knew that I don't want to be anyone's wife again. I am not going to. I mean, marriage is a difficult place. And there are dynamics of in-laws, of what. And for me, there are things I was like, I don't want to deal with those things again. And I had my boys. So my dad said, so I told him, I'm never getting married again. So for me, I'm back home as a child at home. So my dad relocated to Soga. because there's a time when there were a lot of killings. Like if you are developmental, you built a house in Tororo, they come at night and kill you. So while we have land in Tororo, my dad relocated to Busoga. He has a lot of land and property in Busoga. And you know how people give their kids, all of us have been given land in Busoga. So my dad gave me land in Busoga, in Iganga. Also my husband was from Iganga, but this is in Iganga municipality, a place called Bulubandi. So I'm like, for me this cuts it. I'm married in Busoga, my parents are in Busoga, so my kids can also have a village. You know, for my generation, the way we grew up is like, you must have a village. You must go to the village at some point. So me, I grew up knowing that you go to the village. Now here, my kids don't have a village, sort of. Their dad has died and we were not over going to his village. So I'm not really used to that place. But I want a village for my kids. And I always went back to my parents. So when my dad gave me land, he said, oh, you can overplant sweet potatoes. You know those things that grow in Busoga, maize, what an acre, I think, plus. I told Dad, I'm not a farmer. Even if he's taught me how to farm, I have the skills to farm. Physically or even to supervise someone. I have cows, things like that. But mostly I used to do them through my dad. This year I'm growing, my dad in Busoga, there's a place, so he has a lot of land, but there's this particular place where he has over 30 acres of land. And he farms, he does a lot of maize and what. My dad is a very hardworking guy. So maybe that also comes, he has taught us to work hard. Even if he was a very high-ranking officer, he gets his hands dirty. So I learned that yes, you can be a commissioner of communication, but you can come home and weed your garden. You can come home and cook. It takes nothing away from you as a human being, as a man, as a woman. So people get shocked that I do certain things. They would expect me to have 10 maids, this one, pass me that, pass me what.
Bring me.
I actually love my space. Yes, I actually have no maid that people find shocking. Not that I've never had a maid, but most people with the maids, there's drama. I also experienced that. But also living in Europe, there's a lot of do-it-yourself. So I'm like, after this age, after my kid starts, most of my maids, after my kids, well, they're only 2. The first one, when my kid got to 3 years, then I become very because before we all need people, so I need you to support me so that I can be a professional woman. I can leave my kid home and go and work. But once my kids get to 3 years, even 2, this other younger one at 2 years, I took him to school. I know that now that I have where to leave my kid during the day, I can get rid of the maid. So for me, if you remain playing by my rules, and I try to pay them well, better than most Ugandans. Maybe it's not the best, but better than most Ugandans pay. Most people pay 50,000. Me, I would pay 150
to 100.
Yes, me, I pay 150. And people are like, that is wasteful.
Juma's maid, he pays her
20.
I think 30.
He's one of the better paying people, yes.
70, yeah.
But you see also most maids became aware of your rights. I don't know if you have many kids so much. But for me, I would start at 150. But I think also being in Europe, understanding minimum wage, seeing your needs and things like that.
How long did you spend in Europe?
In total, 4 plus 2, 6 years. 6 years. Eventually,
if you remember, between Europe and Uganda, what shaped your character?
Both worlds. I think more of Uganda shaped my world. Actually, I survived in Europe because of the skills I got in Uganda.
Okay.
Europe is a very tough, we all fancy to go abroad, but it's a tough world. Kids get thrown out. Even people from very rich families, 18, what are you still doing in my house? Start renting. They can even support you, but you have to get out of your parents' home. You have to get a job. You have to work. Everything seems in place, but you work. Things are expensive. Cars are affordable, but fuel and parking are not affordable. You must work hard. You can't afford a maid. Me, when I went for my PhD, I had a maid. I was a single woman, unmarried, but I had a maid, that luxury. In Europe, I couldn't afford that. Now you look at the trouble our judge has gotten into. Because she still wanted those trappings that we enjoy in Uganda, that you're a high-ranking professional woman, you have a maid to take care of your kids so that you continue the other life. But she didn't pay attention to the culture now she's gone into. People who had kids in Europe, they would suffer. So for me, I always knew I am going back home. Yeah? Yes, I can work, I can get my hands dirty, but I also need minimum comfort. When I went for my PhD, I already owned a house. Not this one, But I already owned a house in a place called Chirombe. Again, my dad gave me that land. I built, yes, in Luzira. Me, I already owned my home. I had a 3-bedroomed house. Yes. So those are some of the skills I learned early. Yeah. Like I have money, I have no child. I took so long to have a child. My eldest child, I had him when I was 32. And my mom used to say, but I was already with my late husband. And my mom would say, you people, you bore me. Give birth or break up. Like, you've been in this relationship for so long and there's nothing coming out of it. I'm like, we're enjoying ourselves. That's what's coming out of it.
These were the days when you're actively a feminist.
I'm still a feminist. Yes, but you see, there are things I agree with and things I don't. Yes, yes, but yes, I don't know. I always had issues with getting married, but for me, I think it's because of what I saw depicting marriage around me. Like, it's not a very good place.
When we were beginning, you said we are a product of the environment that we come from.
Yes. Yeah. So there are things we can change, there are things we don't change, but also because of where we come from, there are things we can detest for life because you experienced a very negative environment. Like, I'll never go through that, I'll never subject my kids to that, and you know, things like that. Yes. So I took so long to, like, professionals, progressing, going back to school. You know, after university, I first went for a postgraduate diploma at UMI, Uganda Management Institute. I applied for my master's before I finished UMI. So I was doing my exams in UMI. I already had admission for my master's. So I actually did my last exam at UMI, and the next day I flew out of the country. But then I was working at Radio Uganda. So, you know, I'm a busybody. I'm a busybody. So I went back to school. I don't know. Somehow, my mom always laughs that I always say I'm tired of school, but I'm always in school. By the time I was in 3rd year, my career, I was so tired of school. I was struggling. I used to tell my mom, I am tired of school. But I graduated. But within 3 months, I was bored. I went back to school. Yes. And mom was like, are you actually tired of school? So you see, I like to do different things. So I was just there one day and I'm like, I want a master's. And so I had gone to cover an education fair. It was at Sheraton. And these universities from the UK, from where. And that's when I came across that course called Business Communication. I'd never heard about it, but I'm like, aha, this is what I want. This blend, communication and marketing. This is where I want to go. So I picked their prospectus. It was called Sheila International University, an American university, but they had a branch in the UK. Actually, last year they gave me, I was the first recipient of what they call a Diversity and Inclusive Award. This is a American university with 6 branches all over the world, in Germany, in Spain, in the UK. I think Germany has 2. And you know, they sort of secretly, stealthily track their alumni. And there I was one day, and they wrote to me, and they were fully sponsoring me, and I was their first recipient. So I think they've been tracking my progress and the things I did. But also for me, having lived in Europe, also, I've told you my life in Uganda. For me, I am a product of diversity, multiple cultures. I grew up in a barracks. Of course, there are those, my dad being an officer, there was an area for officers, there are places for juniors, but still you're in that environment where there are so many people from different parts of the country, from so many different tribes. I remember there's a weird language.
Can you push the rappel down?
So I think, as I told you, we're all products of our environment. I think so naturally, I'm a very accommodative, unbiased. I don't judge people by skin color or tribe, even if in Uganda there's a lot of that. For me, the first thing I think about is not your tribe, but you. So I remember when I was dating, but also it doesn't mean I'm not biased. As I tell you, we are a product of our society. Of course, I told you my parents moved to Busoga. But I remember when my parents first moved there and started building, went to Uganda, and there were bicycles everywhere. So I used to complain. And I gave Busoga, bicycles everywhere. And you know all these other stereotype things people tease Busoga about, what they understand from 48 and what. So of course I was part of that. But again, when you see what I do, tribe is not important to me. So I meet Dennis as a first-year campus person and we start dating. I didn't know his tribe and it did not matter to me. It was one of my friends who first came and told me that you're always complaining about Musoga, but you know that your boyfriend is a Musoga. Like, no way, he can't be a Musoga. And then we argued about this for like a week. And so I was sharing with him this story that, oh, Laura told me you're a Musoga, and I argued that you can't be a Musoga. What? So he looked at me and asked me, so which tribe do you think I am? I'm like, I don't know, but definitely not a Musoga. They said, but I'm actually a Musoga. Then I said, how come you've never said anything when I complain about a Musoga? So it was because I wanted the girl. So if I'd fronted my tribe, maybe you would have said no, eh? But, well, that's the man I stayed with and had kids with.
As you were dating him, even before starting the relationship, what kind of challenges had you noticed that you did not want to appear in your relationship?
Which I associated with Musoga and my own background, polygamy. Yes. And because my parents migrated to Musoga so long ago, I'd also lived in Jinja, I realized that the Musoga marry at a very young age. I remember there was a boy who was our neighbor, and then in S4 VAC, the guy had already married. His dad had 100 kids and over 6 women. This is very common in Musoga. You find a 20-year-old man with 2 women already. I don't know. Well, you go and research, but it's true. Yeah? So some of those attributes I didn't want. I found it very prevalent in the Musoga. That these are polygamous men, very handsome men, but very polygamous. Yeah? So I knew, like, if I marry Musoga man, not that I knew any tribe, but I knew Luo. For me, I knew that I don't want to marry Luo. I'm a Luo. And there are so many. Luos are one of the biggest gods of patriarchy. So I knew I don't want a Luo man.
But why?
It would be a big
your
fight.
Father was the best dad.
Yes, but the worst husband. Now we are talking about me, the Patricia who wants to get married, who wants a partner. I told you he's the best dad and the worst husband. Yeah, so I knew the attributes I didn't want.
Again, the best friend.
Yes, and I associate. Yeah, and unfortunately, life is like that. That some people represent some of the characters you detest the most, but love and even friends, you don't predetermine your parents, you don't predetermine who you love, you don't predetermine, you just find yourself attracted. What they call fatal attraction. Yes, somehow love is like that. There's fatal attraction.
I was hearing about fatal attraction for the first time. And
you've never heard about
the
it?
Word to Juma.
Let me give you an example. You see the moth, the way the moth, it comes, because I read a lot of novels and things like that. So you see a moth is always drawn to the light. But a lot of these lamps and lights are hot, so it will come and hit the light of fire and it burns and dies. So it is attracted to this bright thing, but that thing is going to kill it. So you see, a lot of, as I've told you before, marriage is a very tough place. But a lot of us desire to be married. A lot of us desire to be in a relationship, and it starts off so well. Then you start clashing and fighting. So it is fatal that sometimes you die because of this love. A lot of women, this man keeps beating you, you run home, what? Then when he's to be arrested again, you're defending him. There's that thing you can't define very deep inside that you feel for someone. So you like him, but again, he's abusive. Maybe he will change. Maybe I'll be able to change him. So yes, fatal attraction. You're attracted to this thing, but it has the worst attribute to you. So you find a lot of women in abusive relationships, but they love the man, and the man keeps beating you, you become lame, you lose an eye, but you still love this man who is very dangerous for your life. Yes, that is what fatal attraction is. Yes, maybe mine wasn't that bad. I mean, I had a beautiful relationship, but any relationship will come with challenges. Of course. And I even remember when my husband died in church, one of the things I said that I am glad. First of all, we dated for so long, like over, I don't know how many years, before we finally came together. And then he also used to complain how I've refused to have his baby. Like I kept saying I want 2 kids, but I did everything to make sure I don't get pregnant. Somehow I knew a child ties you down. I saw all my friends who had had babies early, they can't go out. There are things that mattered to me. I just wanted to be free. I just get up one morning, I'm saying, I am going to maybe Kabali. And also being a journalist. So I knew if I'm pregnant, I can't do those things. If I have a young child, I can't do. So I wanted 2 kids, but I was doing nothing to enable me have the kids. I was actually doing everything to ensure I don't get pregnant. And actually all my kids, I say my kids are divine intervention. Even my last kid, I call him Mugabe, that God gives. Like I'm always on contraceptives and I get pregnant.
So why couldn't you sit down with him and discuss?
Oh, we discussed a lot. He knew exactly who I am, what I thought I knew exactly who he is and what he wants. Yes. But there's that thing about me, like I like to be free. I want to run around. I knew a child would tie me down. So I always said, no. Yes, I want a kid, but not yet. Just not yet. Let me first do this. Let me first go back for my master's. Let me first do my PhD. And actually, my eldest child, I had him at the end of my PhD. So as I was defending my PhD, I think I was about 7 months pregnant. But I remember one of those days I'd come home to see him and things happened. And even when I got pregnant, I didn't know I was pregnant. For me, I knew I was doing everything to ensure I don't get... Let me first finish my PhD. But I had this strange ailment. I had this flu cough. I thought, okay, I'm from home. Maybe I got malaria. So I went for a test. And somehow this lady looked at me and said, have you done a pregnancy test? I'm like, no, there's no way I'm pregnant. Like, what do you mean there's no way you're pregnant? Do you have a boyfriend or what? I'm like, yes. Are you sexually active? Yes. So how can you say you're not pregnant? I said, because I've done everything to make sure I'm not pregnant. So she asked me that, by any chance, because, you know, they ask you that history, did you go home for a whole day? Maybe it's malaria. So we're talking about that. So she asked me, by any chance, did you take anti-malarials? Or then I said, yes, I always take anti-malarials when I'm going back home because I know there's potential to get malaria. So she told me, did you know anti-malarials cancel out contraceptives? I'm like, what? But there I was, and very distraught and very sad. And so she told me, well, you know, UK, they do a lot of psychosocial support. Or do you want therapy? Do you want to have an abortion? And I'm like, no, I don't want to have an abortion. Now, my character is very contradictory, very flowery, very... People would expect me to embrace abortion, but I don't. Weirdly, yet I'm very liberal. But also that religious thing is in me, which I can't explain. So I knew I didn't want to have an abortion, but I also didn't want a child. But I am pregnant. So I told her, well, I'm not happy, but I am not going to have an abortion. Let me go and think about it. So I went off miserable, sad. This PhD colleague I was telling you about, I used to tell him that I have an alien lodged in my body. But one day, so I used to go for these maternity sessions, and one day I went for a scan, you know, as the baby was forming. Now the human being now had formed at 7 months, you see a full baby. And then I told him, guess what? I saw the baby. And he's like, Patricia, do you realize something has changed about you? The maternal instinct is setting. I'm like, no, nothing has changed about me. Like, do you realize that for the first time you've referred to your pregnancy as a baby? You've been saying an alien. I said the alien in my body. Like, I was just not happy. And so he's the one who made me realize, like, you've actually now embraced the pregnancy. But I was unhappy the whole time. And both pregnancies, I'm unhappy. They come unexpected. But when I hold my child in my hand, everything changes. I love my boys. I have 2 boys. They're 10 years apart.
That's great.
Always, I am not in a hurry. I don't want to have a baby. They just happen like that. And so I think for me, I was always like, God answered my prayer, but he knew I'm doing everything to ensure. So he wanted to show me how powerful he is. Like, okay, you're on contraceptives. You keep saying you want 2 kids, but you're blocking yourself from having these 2 kids. I'll give them to you. So yes, I have my 2 sons. I always thought I would have a girl and a boy because my mother gave birth like that, a boy, a girl, a girl, a boy. So I thought naturally people give birth to boys and girls. I thought now the next baby will be a girl. Since the first one is a boy, it was another boy. But I also don't crave, and for me at least, I appreciate that it is okay to have 2 children. It doesn't have to be a particular sex. But also, sometimes I say God is a funny person because of my activism, the things I challenge about men. You can just change like this. I think she was like, okay, let me give you these 2 men and I see how you change them. And so it has also been a learning curve for me. And there are things I appreciate better now that I used to think I can just switch a man. So I have 2 sons, and I've realized men are born naturally in certain ways. because being an activist, there are things I thought, of course they're part of a bigger environment and they interact with other men, other people think differently, but there are things I thought I would be able to control. So I get shocked when my sons come off as very insensitive to females. They make statements and like, hey, that's not right. Especially my younger child is very male in his ways, the things he talks about. What is a woman doing driving a truck? Those are some of the examples we would give of critiquing patriarchy that you can imagine someone throws around the state. And then my son is asking me this and I ask him, so, who is the head of this family? You, mommy. Am I a man? No. Don't I drive a car? Yes, but you know a woman doing this. So, you know, they come up with these statements and I'm like, where is this coming from? Or sometimes even their attitude to certain chores in the house. My younger son will say, no. The other day, just 2 weeks ago, he came and asked me, Mommy, what is it like to be a woman? So I'm like, why? What is it like to be a man? Then he said, no, I'm not a man. I am a boy. Actually, it's very nice to be a boy. The only work I have is to go to school. But if I was a girl, I'd be the one helping you to cook and what. And yes, sometimes I say, pass me that to do that. But me, I enjoy cooking, so I do it. Then I realized maybe I'm doing something wrong. My father taught both girls and boys to cook. I only have 2 kids. But why am I not teaching them some of these things? My young son, who I thought I had control on his perception in the world, is already thinking cooking is a woman's world. Yet my dad was able, despite me thinking it's very patriarchal, was able to show that a boy or female can cook and there's nothing wrong with it.
Times.
My 7-year-old is already saying that men shouldn't cook. Like, where is this coming from? And I'm like, maybe what I'm emphasizing in my boys is something different. Not necessarily what you do in the kitchen, and because I don't mind cooking somehow, I do it. I remember this man I was dating one time. You know how people think about professional women? And for me, because I spent a lot of time at school, I've showed you my journey, like I was always in school, a lot of people would think I don't know how to cook. But I've been brought up and I was taught how to cook, and my dad is an amazing cook. I think he cooks better than my mom. But I'm also, those who tasted my food say I'm a good cook. But anyway, so I dated this guy and I would always say, oh, you come home and I cook for you and things like that. And they'd always dodge, no, let's go here for a drink. Let's go here and do this. But one day, anyway, eventually comes home and I cooked for him and he was shocked and he told me, you can actually cook. And I'm like, yes, I can. I didn't even know something was wrong. Like, you know, I've been dodging you cooking for me because I thought I would get food poisoning. A lot of women like you don't know how to cook. Then I'm like, well, so you see I'm different. That is, so I have surprising things about me. As an activist, people don't expect those things out of me. But I think it's because of the way I've been brought up. So, I mean, women are expected to cook. I'm a woman who can cook. So for me, it's not an issue. And you know, most men, my dad being one of them, I remember growing up, sometimes would tell my mom, oh, I miss my mom. My grandmother had died. And one of my other names that I don't use, Bernadette, Nyaburu. I'm named after my grandmother, my dad's mother. And actually, my dad refers to me as his mother. So that's how we relate.
You pull the rappel down?
Oh, yes. I've even lost track of what point I was trying to make.
Nyaburu.
But women and men. No, there was a point I was making. And that's why I refer to that name about cooking and things like that. But also I'm told my grandmom was very, very enterprising. So maybe some of those attributes come from that. Yes, the thing about cooking. So my dad used to say, if my mother was alive, the way she cooked bo, you know, for you people, you can't. So most men make reference to their mother. I remember one of the criticisms I got from my sister-in-law is that my husband is the only man who prefers his wife's food to his mother's. Like, would go to his mother like, oh, you make it the way Patricia does it. And they would be irritated, like, come on, what do you mean? So just to say that I have very good culinary skills, Yes, I think that was the point I was making and things like that. That men will always say that my mom is a very good cook. So they will critique There are wives that learn to cook like my mom, but for me, I didn't have to deal with that because I was obviously the better cook and things like that. But you see, these are some of the things that shape us. So also the kind of jobs you do, the supervisors you have, sometimes can shape you. If they encourage innovation. So I think to other women, for me, I said, don't be too proud to get your hands dirty. Don't waste so many years in school and then your preference is to get married. Go and work a bit. Yes, you can decide to be a housewife. That's your personal choice. But to me, I'm like, why did you waste so many years at school? And you don't want to do anything with those skills. For me, that's how I always looked at it. That yes, it's okay to be married. I mean, we make personal choices. I have my own opinion about marriage, but I got married. I have my own opinion about kids. I'm not a fan of little kids, but I'm a mother and I love my sons to bits. I'll kill for them. So, I mean, certain things change you, certain things change your perspective. But the thing about hard work, there's no way around it. Sometimes you have all these trappings around you and then they disappear at some point in your life. Just a few years ago, I used to work with Rural Electrification Agency, but I was also teaching at Makerere. Then somehow when my husband died, I don't know, somehow, maybe we deal with anxiety, or these days we call it mental health. But you know, in Uganda, I grew up, there's nothing like mental health. You dealt with the issue in one way or the other, but it was never looked at. So we have different ways we cope with situations. So I remember me being a busybody, I just realized I just need to cut back and stay away from things. And I could have quit everything, but then I realized I have my kids to take care of, so I need money. So I just started cutting off, like I started dropping off consultants. Like I just didn't have the energy to move on. I just couldn't think straight. And sometimes you're having those fights in a relationship and the sick man is one of those worst people. So my husband got a strange ailment. Towards the end, they said he had a brain tumor, but it was not understandable. But would get sort of like epileptic attacks, get seizures, lose his memory. One time he actually came around and said, for the last 1 week, he has been wondering who I am. Who is this kind lady? Who is taking care of me? Who's feeding me? Who's what? But he could recognize his son, but he couldn't recognize me. So there were those challenging moments. But also a sick man is, I think men don't know how to be sick. So would fight about going to hospital, would fight about him taking his medicine and things like that. But still, he was a very sensitive person. So I remember one of the things I said, that one of the things I appreciate most about him is that he was very fair. You know, I have a lot of friends who are married and the relationship is not a partnership. Mine was a partnership. Of course, there are things he was very strong about, there are things I was very strong about, but I'm happy that, or maybe because we started dating at a very young age and dated for a very long time and were actually friends, maybe the friendship remained, that we were friends and would talk about things like, you know, with friends you should be able to tell each other the truth, tell each other how you've hurt me, where you should change, and the friend should be able to change. And when they can't, they tell you, this one, no, you're just being touchy, you're just being this. And you know, he was, I don't know, I'm always attracted to very reserved men. So I make noise about this and would let me make my noise. And 2 days later, he's like, so Patricia, are you ready to listen? I'm like, ready to listen to what? Like, we're not talking about anything. I'm like, the other day.
A file kept.
So he would disarm me like that. Like I would be shocked and I would listen to his side of the story. Then he would give his side of the story. So it was weird like that. Like I'm very, very, when I'm angry, like I go all out. So he would just keep quiet and leave me to talk. He tried to say, no. So he would keep quiet and I think he would just watch me and wait for me to calm down. And then say, now about the other issue, are you ready to listen to me? That would throw me off.
Still, if you're not ready, he would postpone.
Of course, when he starts, and I will say, of course, but when I over-argue, he leaves me. But at some point, even in the middle of some conversation where we are both laughing, and he says, but you know, you're a very unfair person. You say you fight for women's equity, you stand for social justice, but you're not fair. No, I am fair. I'm like, okay, then listen to me, then I would listen. So, yeah, there was that. But for me, those are one of the things I remember about him most. Like, he was a very fair person. Most people, you find that the relationship is like, I'm the head of the family, I am the man. You do what I've said. I am the kind of person, like, you know, this joke people say about visas. We are going out as girls. Do you have a visa? Have you talked to your husband? Have you talked to your wife? Have they allowed? For me, I didn't get visas. I just informed you that I'll be home late today. I am not seeking for your opinion. I am going out. I am letting you know. Also, he did not need permission from me
to go.
So for me, communication is very important to me, even professional, but even in a relationship. One of the things that would make me mad is when you didn't communicate to me. You can't walk home at 5 and you didn't tell me where you are. I'll fight about it. That can't you just tell me you're coming home late? Me, I'm not a woman who will chase you around and follow you. No. My life is very full. I am able to enjoy my life without a man. I'm able to go out on my own, with or without my friends. I can just say, I need a drink, I'll go to a bar and order for my drink. And people find that weird. But maybe that I picked it living out. Like, it's okay for me to just go to the bar, order for a beer or 2 drink, and I walk away. And nobody has to take me out for me to be able to do that. So for me, I'm able to do that. I don't need a lot of validation. I just said, this is what I want to do. What does it take to do it? I'll go and do it. So maybe certain things are self-taught, certain things because of the environments I've grown in, they have shaped me the way I am. So hard work, I've been brought up in a family where hard work mattered. Both my families say they came from very, very poor backgrounds. So they grew up working hard. Both my parents are people who in their family, they have come out. Yes? So they've worked so hard, they've embraced education. So my parents emphasized education because for them it made a difference. So much as I grew up from a fairly well-to-do family, my parents' background was not well-to-do, and they always took us back to see our grandparents, and we see where they came from. So I appreciated that, that it's about hard work. They also taught us that you can grow up in a very rich family. They would give you example. You say so and so. Remember this rich man, when he died, he never taught his kids how to look after resources. They sold everything, and now they are the poor ones. So my dad always said, growing up in a rich family doesn't mean that you'll be rich. Those are not your resources. Those are your dad's resources. Work for yours. I grew up at a time when it was fancy for women to use their father's names, and we tried that, and my dad banned all of us. Like, I've given you both your names. Don't use my name. You have your own name. Make it or break it. I tried to attach my dad's name to mine. He refused. My dad is called Ariel Keller. I said no. He refused it. Anyone who tried to use his name, he refused. He said, make your own name, kill your own name. So I also knew I have to work for my own name. I am not the commissioner's daughter. I am not saying you're enjoying those benefits because you're my child. But now you're working. Make your own name. So I also learned that I have to make my own name. I have to work for myself. If I want to car, I have to work. Yes, I grew up, my dad being a director of transport, I told you. He was in charge of all this. There was always a car at home. Actually, it's those drivers who told me, you know, some of the best drivers in this country are prison drivers because they are dealing with these high-risk prisoners. Those are the people who taught me how to drive. And I'm a fast driver, I'm a farm driver, I think I'm a good driver. But I also learned that even in driving, there's discipline. So my dad attached one of those officers to teach me how to drive, and I always started learning my driving at 6, 7 after work. He says, I want you to learn how to drive in the night. If you can drive in the night, then you'll be a good driver. So my lessons were always between 7 and 9 p.m. And then after they gave him feedback, you know, those protocols of theirs of military people. There's hierarchy and how they report. So they would give a report to, yeah, she's a good learner, but for a fresh driver, she's too fast. So my dad one time, you know, put me to the test. He sat in the car like we are going to Tororo. Put me like, you're the one driving. You come to office. Of course, I would drive in the night, but I was scared still. Like a lot of blaring light, and said, they've told me you're very fast. I want to see that. And I want to see that you're good. So he said, we're going to Tororo. And he said, yes, I have observed you're a very fast driver. So I'm going to start. He literally gives you time. My dad is very mathematical, very scientific. If I called him now and said, I'm coming to Iganga, He'll say in 2.5 at your speed, but you need to slow down. So if I reach early, I say you are driving fast, and he will reprimand me for that. And of course, he used to be in those road safety things. If I come a bit, I said, you must have stopped somewhere. No, I didn't. No, you must have. Because if you're driving at between 80 and 100, you should have been here between this time and this time. And then sometimes I've stopped somewhere, but I don't want to engage in that. You're dodging, then you laugh and say, hey, anyway, I stopped in Ginger, did this, did that. I say, I knew it. Yeah. So also he brought us up with precision. Yeah? Like I learned from a very young age how to plan things. I want this, you sort of plan. So I have to wake up at this time to be. So you see in Uganda, when other people are giving excuses that it rained, there's a lot of jam. It is rare that I have those. Sometimes, yes, I have it, but it's rare. And for me, it's never an excuse. It will be the actual. I shouldn't have an excuse, but I do. There was a horrible jam where maybe I underestimated. Maybe that day truck fell across the road. But that's how I've been taught that to be able to be there for the 8 o'clock meeting, first of all, it's important to reach there 10 minutes before at least, so that you're not panting. And if you're the one in charge, if you're the one chairing, you should even reach there earlier. Then you're in charge. You know, imagine you're the one chairing a meeting, you're the one who is late, you're panting, you're disorganized, you lose respect. You know, there are things my dad would emphasize because I think in the military, things like polishing shoes. I hate polishing shoes, but my dad with polishing shoes, because in the military, those are some of the things. The first thing you get up is to make sure you can see your face on your shoe, the brushing and what. So there are those things he taught you, and sometimes it annoyed you, but I think he was just preparing us for our future. Because there are things now I just do.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Patricia. Because of time, I think we shall have the second part of this. It is not by coincidence that we've taken all this time for this part. I know you might have missed somewhere, but we shall continue with the conversation. Dr. Patricia has got a very wide history and a very rich history. Normally we tell people that some of these people we bring on such platforms are so resourceful to the nation, and that's why when we sit like this, you really need to have a lesson to pick from whatever you hear from them. But maybe as we wind up, how did you build the resilience? Just in a few words, that resilience.
In a few words, one, because I grew up in that military environment. My dad ran his home like a military assignment. I think that's how we always teased him. So I told you some of the things he subjected us to. You want a book, work for it, go and dig. Yes? So I learned that whatever I have to get, I have to work for it from a very young age, because he subjected me to that. But also I've experienced hardships in my life, and I knew I had to get over them. You've lost your husband, so you want to collapse in a heap, so what? People will come and make flowery statements and disappear. You still have to feed, you have to take care of your kid. So I think also that built me. So I remember 2 years ago when government rationalized, I think it's 4 years ago actually, I used to work with Rural Electrification Agency and I lost my job. And earlier I had dropped off all the other jobs. I told you I just felt like I needed to regroup. I have this discussion with myself, slow down, rearrange. So I lost my job for 2 years. But because of my other skills, I don't fear to get my hands dirty, but also because of my teaching experience, I would do consultancies, I would teach, but I was able to go through that phase. And I remember my son had just done his P7. I didn't even tell him I had lost a job. I still tried to provide for them. I had also learned to save along the way, but I was able to go through that phase before I got another job, without being such a big problem to others. You know, when you have no job and you've been able to fend for yourself and look after others, people avoid you. They think if you're calling, you want to borrow money. No. Yes? So I remember telling my son that I'd lost my job when the P7 results came out and he wanted an international school, and I told him I can't afford it. And for him, no, but mommy, you can. You've been able to do this for me. You've been able to do this for me. Then I'm like, I planned those things. That's why I'm able to do them for you. But now I have no job, so I can't afford the Tibers and what. Still, the school is fairly expensive, but I knew I could afford it. It's at Turkish Light Academy, yes, which also is a bit. But what he wanted was more, which earlier maybe I could afford. But also going through that, and when I got another job, a lot of people were talking to me, And I didn't even know I was resilient. It took people like me to, but Dr. Litho, you're very resilient because of that scaffold. And also this job I got, there was a lot of fighting. Everyone wanted that position. And after I got the job, I learned that I was the first assistant commissioner outside the Ministry of Energy to hold this position. So it was a first. So many seasoned people who had been in civil service, who are communicators, wanted the position. So it was competitive. There was malice. I also learned that that saying came back to me. It's not what you deserve, it's what you negotiate. Because like I told you, I have that challenge of having gotten certain thing easy. Because of my performance at school, I easily got jobs, I easily got a promotion. It was the first time in my life where my papers didn't work. Why? I had all the qualification, but I learned that I needed networks. Because to get shortlisted, you can be knocked off the shortlist, even if you had all the papers. For the first time I learned, which I think is something men know, that women don't know. You know, when you have certain things done for you, given to you, you don't know you have to fight. For the first time in my life, I had to look for networks, and I'd always detested that. That for me, you apply for a job, I apply. I get or I don't. But this time you hear rumors, they've knocked you off the list, you need to go and see who, and at first I refused, but eventually I got out of that shell and started networking, going to meet people. And I remember my first meeting, I was feeling so stupid. Like I've never had to beg for a job. But you see, now I was in a situation where I was unemployed. Yes, the consultancies came, but they're not sustainable, as you know. Today you get a very big gig, I got some. They give you about your 50 million, but you have responsibility, you have children. And for another 1 year, there's no consultancy. Yeah, so I knew I needed an income, a monthly income, to be able to take care of my kids. If I didn't have kids, maybe I would have survived. But again, I didn't want the standard of life I was giving them to drop so badly. I should still be able to buy you a soda, honestly. Instead of crying, Munange, you know you're an orphan and your mother has no job. No, I tried to, of course I had to adjust, but I tried to keep things almost the same. But that's when I knew I had to network. Then they take you to who, then you negotiate to who, then, but they told us this. But what I learned, that yes, beyond the papers, you must have networks, you must nurture. I learned that social capital works. Some of my former students actually played a very key role, where they would hear something, the other people don't know, they are close to me, they have been my students, and they would come to me, Dr. Litho, I want to see you. Then they come. So we've had this. But you know, doctor, these things are for fighting. Please know it is a battle, it is a war. Don't just sit back and you think you'll come to the interview and get a job. Let's go. I like doing it. Yes, they would make me the appointments and force me and come for me and take me to meet these people who are in the line of ensuring I get the job or not. And eventually I got to do the interview, and people were shocked that the woman has her papers, she's articulate, she knows her things. I remember the chairperson of my interview even saying that, so finally I meet the famous Patricia Litho. I've heard so much about you. You actually have papers. They had said I didn't have papers. My PhD is a fake, I don't know what. It's a long story, a whole different story. We can talk about it another time. I know I actually haven't talked about the professional life. Because we've mostly...
By the way, in our other episode, we shall look at the politics of workplaces.
Yes. Yes, and also my life as a gender activist. But those are some of the things Juma is passionate about. I don't know if you've seen some of the clips, what I talk about. Maybe
yes. I've seen.
So you see there, because I told you I'm a cocktail of so many things. So maybe we can sort of bracket them like that. So we can talk about the politics of life and how sometimes when you start it so easy, as you go higher up the ranks, then the politics set in. When you're a younger officer, I think you don't appreciate the politics. It's almost safe. And then at a certain level, the politics come in. Because when you're a manager, also you can find other forces playing a role that, you can find that now I work for government. For some reason, I've always worked for government. There might be projects, but it is so important to be pro-government. So you realize, is she for movement or is she a noob person? Which to you didn't matter. Now me being in academia, there's academic freedom. So sometimes I say the things that costed me and I would be reprimanded that, madam, you're a government official, you can't say this. But also, I'm so used to enjoying my academic freedom that I can give these examples, critique. Even if I support government, I can critique it. Then I learned that, madam, at that level, you must be seen to be yes, 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 yes. Oh, yes. So as I have this job, it became political. It was important to know if I'm leaning towards government or not. Otherwise, they don't want an anti-government person holding such a position. So that plays in the bigger politics and the immediate workplace politics. And also being maybe the last, I don't know how much time we have, but maybe one of the last things I want to say, we can start off there next time, is that it is very easy for women to join the job market, but they're the first to quit. In journalism, you can see when you come to a mass comm class, most of the students we teach are female. Why are they not in the newsroom? Because those realities of sexual exploitation manifest there. Sometimes in that environment of school, you're cushioned a bit. Maybe some people face it, some people don't. But the reality starts then when you start working, and who wants to sleep with you, who is saying they're the ones behind your promotion. Internship. Yes, I started experiencing it then. So it was so easy for me to start working compared to my male colleagues, because men had nothing to offer apart from their skill. And most people in charge were men. They just want to sleep with you. You want a promotion, you sleep. And me, I was like, I'll never sleep for a job. So then you realize, so you leave that job, go to another one. Within a short time again, you find there is that. Some people are very obvious, others are subtle. So yes.
Okay. Thank you. From the conversation, you can now realize that it's a combination of skills, and it's a process, of course. Hard work really pays. It's not just, I think you've not heard us talking about a sabo. Like which doctors?
Oh, which doctors? I don't know if it works. Me, I've been taught to work hard. You work
so
for it.
So it's all about working. Then also understanding that life is a fight for space, and she really negotiated for her space, and I think we shall continue the conversation from there. My name is Daniel Mugoya, and I've been with Dr. Patricia. Dr. Patricia is the Assistant Communications
Assistant Commissioner for Communication and Information Management
at the Ministry of Energy. How is Susan?
Susan Naruoga. Oh, she's well.
Yeah,
yes, she's one